Karen enters Aquarium and demands the Dolphins be covered for Modesty. Crowds poured through the wide, glass-fronted entrance of the Sunwave Marine Aquarium, parents dragging excited children behind them, and tourists pausing to snap pictures of the giant archway shaped like a breaching whale. Inside, the cool air and scent of saltwater greeted the eager masses, most of whom were there for the highlight of the day. The Dolphin show scheduled for noon at the stadium by the far end of the complex. It was a cheerful scene, full of energy and anticipation, with kids chattering about their favorite sea creatures and parents grateful for the brief reprieve that an hour-long performance could offer. Among the crowd, weaving her way through with a grimace of disapproval etched deeply into her carefully made-up face, was Karen, a middle-aged woman dressed in a beige sun hat far too large for indoor wear, oversized sunglasses that reflected her surroundings like mirrored domes, and a pastel shawl that fluttered around her arms like she was shielding herself from some invisible corruption. Pushing a designer stroller with one hand and clutching her phone in the other, Karen muttered to herself with increasing frustration as she glanced at her watch, and then at the printed schedule she had already highlighted and annotated in pink ink. Her children trailed behind her reluctantly. The older boy, Jason, around 15, slouched in a hoodie despite the warmth, his earbuds buried deep in his ears as he tried to disappear into his music. The younger one, Lily, about 8, was trying to balance a stuffed sea otter on her head while skipping to keep up. Karen's voice cut through the din as she barked orders at them to stay close and not touch anything, especially that sticky railing that probably has diseases. When she saw the long line of people forming for the Dolphin Stadium, she let out an exaggerated groan and muttered, "This is what happens when people don't plan. I told them noon sharp." She marched past the families already seated, muttering "excuse me" with an air of superiority, then settled into a row marked reserved for staff guests, ignoring the sign completely. As she arranged her bags and began unpacking hand sanitizer, a reusable snack container filled with kale chips, and a thin pamphlet on natural energy fields and their effect on children, she scowled at the stage ahead where the trainers were preparing for the show. The arena was packed, the splash zone brimming with kids in ponchos, and an announcer's voice echoed cheerfully over the speakers as he introduced the Dolphins by name. "Let's give a warm welcome to Splash, Bubbles, and our newest addition, Sunny." The audience erupted in cheers as 3 sleek, gray dolphins leapt into the air in unison, their bodies arcing like liquid silver, crashing back into the water with joyful precision. Children clapped, parents filmed, and the trainers on the platforms gestured with whistles and hand signals. Everything was going beautifully until Karen noticed something. She had been watching with a narrowed gaze, arms crossed tightly across her chest, lips pressed so firmly together they were nearly invisible. Her eyes widened when Splash, the lead dolphin, swam close to the glass barrier and performed a full-body roll, exposing his belly for a brief moment. She gasped audibly, grabbing Lily and turning the child's head away as if she had just been exposed to something profane. Her eyes darted around, but no one else seemed to notice or care. Clenching her jaw, Karen stood abruptly, drawing the attention of those sitting nearby, and raised one hand into the air like she was waiting to be acknowledged at a PTA meeting. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice slicing through the applause and cheerful commentary. The announcer faltered slightly, caught off guard, but continued speaking. Undeterred, Karen waved both arms now. "Excuse me, I need to speak to whoever is in charge of this facility immediately." The show didn't stop, but several heads turned toward her. A nearby usher approached hesitantly, whispering, "Ma'am, please sit down. The show is in progress." But Karen wasn't having it. She gestured violently toward the water. "This is a family event," she shouted. "A family event, and you're just allowing these animals to flaunt themselves indecently in front of children. My daughter just saw a dolphin nipple. She is 8. There was a stunned silence in the rows around her, followed by a few confused chuckles and the sound of someone whispering, "Wait, what did she say?" The usher blinked. "I'm sorry, did you say?" Yes, Nipples, do you not see what's happening? That dolphin just exposed himself to my family. This is disgusting. Where are the modesty coverings? This is public exposure. Jason, still slouched beside her, sank lower into his seat, pulling the brim of his hoodie over his face. "Oh my God," he mumbled. "Please stop." The usher tried to speak, but Karen continued, her voice rising with every word. "I have every right to demand that these animals be appropriately clothed. This is the 21st century, for goodness sake. We do not allow nakedness in public for a reason. Why should the rules be different for dolphins just because they can't talk? This is animal indecency, and I will not allow my children to be subjected to it." The trainer on the stage finally signaled for the music to pause and walked to the edge of the platform. Taking the microphone, she addressed the situation as diplomatically as she could. "Hi there, ma'am. I'm Sarah, one of the lead marine behaviorists here at Sunwave. I assure you, dolphins are not anatomically the same as humans. They don't have external nipples like we do. Their mammary slits are not visible during shows, and there's absolutely nothing inappropriate about their natural swimming behavior." Karen scoffed. "Of course you'd say that. I've read things. I know the truth. Don't gaslight me with your pseudoscience." "Ma'am," Sarah said, trying to keep the tension out of her voice, "I can promise you we follow strict guidelines for animal presentation, and nothing about the show violates decency standards. If you feel uncomfortable, I recommend stepping outside with your children until the show is complete." Karen crossed her arms defiantly. "No, I paid for this experience. I'm not leaving until those dolphins are covered. I will be filing a complaint, possibly a lawsuit, and I'm filming everything for evidence." She raised her phone and began recording, narrating in a stern voice. "This is Karen Anderson, concerned mother and advocate for family-friendly entertainment. I'm here at the Sunwave Aquarium where they are currently exposing children to nudity disguised as science." Jason groaned audibly. A few rows away, someone snorted. Karen turned, eyes wide, scanning for support. But all she saw were raised eyebrows, stifled laughter, and a teenager too rose up, already uploading a video of her rant to TikTok with the caption, "Karen thinks dolphins need bras." The tension in the Dolphin Stadium was now thick enough to cut with a knife, though most of the audience was doing their best not to laugh out loud. The show had come to an awkward halt, the trainers standing hesitantly on their platforms, the dolphins swimming in slow circles beneath the surface, unaware of the human controversy swirling above them. Sarah, the lead trainer, exchanged glances with the other staff, silently weighing whether it was worth trying to continue or if they were better off waiting for security to deal with the situation. Meanwhile, Karen remained standing, arms crossed with a sense of righteous indignation gleaming in her eyes, her phone still raised and recording her surroundings as if she were some crusader unearthing a vast conspiracy. Her voice, slightly trembling with the effort to remain composed, narrated every moment with dramatic flair, as though she expected a documentary crew to swoop in and edit her footage into an exposé. "And here," she intoned solemnly, zooming in on a trainer giving instructions to a dolphin, "you can see the handlers, clearly indoctrinated, forcing these innocent mammals to expose themselves in front of children. This is what society has come to." A few rows behind her, a group of teenagers burst into quiet laughter, trying and failing to keep it discreet. One of them mimicked her voice with exaggerated gasps, whispering to his friend, "Oh no, the dolphin flashed me." The audience around them began to buzz with suppressed amusement, and even some of the parents who had initially looked concerned were now exchanging glances that said, "Is she serious?" Karen's daughter Lily tugged on her sleeve, her voice tiny and nervous. "Mom, can we just watch the show now?" But Karen wasn't listening. Her eyes were locked on Sarah, and she was already striding toward the front row, stepping over people's feet and pushing past a woman holding a baby. "I demand to speak to the head of marine ethics," she said, ignoring the fact that the term she used didn't actually exist in any real aquarium job title. "You are promoting indecency, and I am not leaving until I see a written policy explaining why those dolphins aren't wearing coverings." Sarah, who had handled everything from overly excited toddlers to a seagull that once stole her hat mid-show, took a deep breath and leaned into the microphone. "Once again, ma'am, dolphins do not wear clothing. They are marine mammals, and they're not anatomically similar to humans in the way you're suggesting. Their bodies are naturally streamlined for swimming. If you continue to disrupt the show, I'm afraid we'll have to escort you out for the safety of our staff and guests." That was the spark that lit the powder keg. Karen reeled back as though slapped, scandalized beyond reason. "Escort me, for standing up for children. You're siding with nudity over a mother's right to protect her daughter's innocence." She turned around to the audience, trying to rally them to her cause. "Are none of you seeing this? Have we all become so numb that we're just fine with dolphin nudity now? What next? Shirtless sea lions, bikini-clad belugas." The absurdity of her words sent a ripple of muffled laughter through the stadium, and someone near the back actually yelled out, "Can't wait for the jellyfish burlesque act." The laughter turned into a minor wave of chuckles, and even one of the younger trainers bit their lip to keep from smiling. Karen's face went red with fury as she spun back toward Sarah. "I'm not laughing. This is not funny. This is a matter of morality." She jabbed her finger toward the water as if the dolphins themselves were somehow to blame. "Children are being corrupted. You people are disgusting." Security finally arrived, 2 uniformed staff members walking calmly but purposefully down the aisle toward her. The lead guard, a man in his 50s with a kind face and years of experience dealing with disorderly guests, approached her with a practiced calm. "Ma'am," he said, gently placing himself between her and the stage, "I'm going to have to ask you to return to your seat or leave the premises. You are disturbing the show and other guests. This is your formal warning." Karen, now incensed and convinced that she was being targeted, pointed at the guard and declared, "This is discrimination. Against concerned mothers, against modesty, against decency. I will not be silenced. I am a taxpayer and I demand accountability." She waved her phone in his face. "This is all being recorded. I have the right to protest." "You don't have the right to disturb a private event," the guard replied calmly. "This is not a government facility. You are disrupting the peace, and you're now on the verge of being removed for trespassing." That word, trespassing, seemed to push Karen into a new level of indignation. "Trespassing? I paid for a ticket. I demand a refund, and I want the name of every person here so I can name you all in my lawsuit. Especially her," she added, pointing dramatically at Sarah, who stood with her arms folded, entirely done with the situation. "You're the one responsible for this perversion of marine education." Jason, still buried in his hoodie, finally spoke, his voice loud and cracked with embarrassment. "Mom, please, just stop. You're humiliating us. They're dolphins. They don't even have just stop." Karen turned, betrayed, eyes wide with disbelief. "Jason, sweetie, you saw what they did. You're just too young to understand. I'm doing this for you." "I'm 15, he snapped back. "And I learned about dolphins in, like, 4th grade. You're just making stuff up." He stood abruptly and stomped off down the aisle, past the security guards and toward the exit, followed moments later by Lily, who mumbled a timid sorry to the usher before running after her brother. Alone now, Karen looked stunned but quickly recomposed herself, holding her phone higher and adjusting her shawl like a cape. "There go my children," she said into the camera, her voice dripping with melodrama. "Traumatized, brainwashed by a society that's forgotten virtue. But I will not give up. I will make this place answer for what they've done." Security made one final offer to escort her out quietly, but she refused to leave without a scene. When they gently took her by the elbows to guide her toward the exit, she began chanting, "Cover the dolphins! Cover the dolphins!" Her voice echoed throughout the stadium as the audience, now fully caught between shock and laughter, began recording her on their own phones. Within moments, the first few videos had already hit social media, and hashtags like Cover the Dolphins and Karen vs Aquarium were starting to spread. And as Karen was led out the gates, yelling over her shoulder that she was manifesting change, the dolphin show resumed at last, with a final leap from the Dolphins that soaked the front row and earned thunderous applause, an ironic encore to one of the strangest disruptions the Aquarium had ever seen. Outside the stadium, beneath the towering glass awning that overlooked the central aquarium plaza, Karen paced furiously in front of a decorative tide pool display. Her sandals slapped against the stone walkway with every step, her oversized sun hat now crooked atop her head, bobbing wildly as she jabbed her finger at her phone screen, muttering breathless fragments of narration as her live stream audience slowly climbed from dozens to hundreds. "This is the hill I will die on," she declared into the camera, her tone straining under a mixture of indignation and performative martyrdom. "Today it's Dolphins. Tomorrow it'll be something worse. Our children are being slowly desensitized and no one wants to listen. Not the trainers, not the security guards, not even my own children." Her voice cracked just slightly, and she tried to compose herself with a deep inhale. The camera shook as she paused to open her tote and pull out a pre-folded protest sign made from a piece of cardboard that had once been the back of a cereal box. Written in bright marker were the words, "Marine morality now. Demand dolphin decency." She raised it high above her head, adjusted her phone's angle to frame both her face and the banner, and marched to the entrance gate. The aquarium staff at the front had already been alerted by radio, and when they saw her approaching, 2 employees discreetly positioned themselves on either side of the entrance. Karen, undeterred, slowed to a halt in front of the main doors and planted her feet like a warrior claiming sacred ground. She placed her phone on a small collapsible tripod she carried in her purse, adjusted it for optimal angle, and hit record. "I've been silenced," she said solemnly, "but I will not be erased. This institution promotes the exposure of innocent minds to indecent creatures. They laugh, they mock, but this is about family values. I'm beginning a peaceful protest, right here, right now, until change is made." A few passers-by paused, uncertain whether this was performance art, a prank, or a genuine demonstration. One father, holding the hand of a sticky-faced toddler, whispered to his wife, "I think that's the dolphin lady from TikTok." The woman snorted. "The one with the nipples thing." Karen heard this and turned to them, sign in hand, nodding with righteous authority. "Yes," she said firmly, "the one brave enough to speak out when no one else would." Back inside, the Dolphin show had resumed and finished without incident. Sarah and her team cleaned up the stage while guests filed out, many still giggling about the interruption. In the staff break room, security reviewed the incident footage and logged the report, unsure of whether Karen would return. They didn't have to wonder long. Just as families gathered for the next scheduled SEAL performance, Karen launched her protest directly outside the aquarium doors, packing in slow circles while chanting, "Cover the Dolphins, protect our children, say no to marine nudity." It wasn't long before someone posted a new video of her holding her cardboard sign and trying to hand printed flyers to confused tourists. The flyers, clearly designed in Microsoft Word and printed on pastel stationery, contained paragraphs of rambling text about aquatic modesty, the erosion of moral boundaries in entertainment, and a demand for an emergency committee for marine presentation standards to be formed at once. People began to gather, not to join her protest, but to watch it unfold with amused curiosity. Children pointed, teenagers pulled out their phones. A local news photographer, tipped off by the viral videos, arrived and began snapping shots from the sidewalk. Karen mistook this attention as support and held her sign higher, raising her voice as she began her prepared speech. "When society loses sight of its moral compass," she bellowed, "it is up to everyday citizens to stand up and say no more." But her momentum wavered when Jason and Lily returned from the parking lot with their father, a man whose face bore the expression of someone who had just been called out of work early and had no idea what disaster was waiting for him. He wore a plain polo shirt, pressed slacks, and an aura of weary tolerance, like someone used to Karen's outbursts but unprepared for them to go this public. He looked at the spectacle Karen shouting into her phone, holding a sign, surrounded by giggling teens and silently recording parents, and slowly removed his sunglasses. "Cairn," he said softly, but with a firmness that cut through her chant. "What is this?" She turned, stunned for a moment that he was not immediately supportive, and marched toward him. "Our daughter was exposed to dolphin genitals," she hissed, waving her arm dramatically toward the aquarium. "And when I raised concerns, they mocked me. They threw me out for trying to protect our kids. You should have seen what they did. They were rolling, they were showing off their parts. It was like a burlesque show in water." Jason slapped a hand to his forehead. "Dad, please make her stop." Cairn's husband looked from his children, clearly mortified, to the growing crowd, and finally to Cairn herself. He took a breath. "Cairn, dolphins don't look. This isn't about the dolphins, is it?" "It's entirely about the dolphins," she snapped. "It's about what they represent, slippery, unchecked indecency slipping into our culture like a tide we forgot to guard against." "Slippery indecency," he echoed, bewildered. "Cairn, you're making a scene again. There are kids watching, and reporters." "Good," she exclaimed. "Let them watch. Let the whole world watch." And the world was watching. Her live stream had now been clipped and reposted by several large meme pages. One video had over 200,000 views in less than an hour, featuring her quote about bikini-clad belugas over a remix of dolphin clicks set to EDM music. Cairn's image, wide-eyed, sun hat askew, cardboard sign raised, was already being edited into digital posters, mock movie covers, and social commentary memes. She had achieved a kind of strange internet fame, though not the kind she had hoped for. The aquarium released a brief public statement emphasizing their commitment to family-friendly entertainment and correcting misconceptions about marine mammal anatomy. Several marine biologists on social media shared educational posts explaining dolphin physiology, which only further highlighted how bizarre Cairn's protest had become. Still, she remained undeterred. As security returned to speak with her again, offering a final warning that her presence on aquarium property would be considered trespassing from this point forward, she looked into her phone camera and declared, "They may silence my voice, but they cannot silence the truth. You'll see. One day, people will look back and thank me for raising the alarm." With that, she allowed herself to be escorted to the curb, where she stood defiantly on public property just beyond the aquarium's reach, still recording, still chanting, her sign held high. Behind her, the sounds of playful children and dolphin whistles echoed through the glass walls, a strange soundtrack to one woman's very public, very confused war on modesty. By the following morning, Cairn's protest had grown beyond the aquarium walls and seeped into the chaotic bloodstream of the internet like dye in water, staining forums, news feeds, and comment sections across the country. Clips of her standing at the gates waving her homemade sign were paired with auto-tuned remixes of her now infamous phrases, "Cover the dolphins," "marine morality," and "burlesque show in water." Memes spread faster than any carefully organized campaign could ever hope to. Her outraged expression, framed by her crooked sun hat, had been photoshopped onto everything from movie posters to religious paintings. A satirical petition to legally require swimwear on all aquatic mammals in public performances had reached 20,000 signatures overnight. Cairn, meanwhile, was up before dawn in her living room, surrounded by open laptops, her phone mounted on a flexible tripod clipped to a houseplant, and stacks of highlighted printouts beside her, printouts she had labeled evidence. Her live stream began with a solemn expression, lips pursed tightly, chin lifted like a general preparing troops for battle. "We've been mocked," she declared to the small but loyal audience that had now grown into the low thousands. "We've been laughed at, ridiculed, called names, but that's what happens when you speak the truth. The truth makes people uncomfortable. I'm not afraid of that discomfort. I welcome it." She adjusted the lighting and continued, now speaking with a cadence that mimicked political pundits and televangelists alike. "This is bigger than dolphins. This is about the soul of public decency. If we don't take a stand now, where does it end? Naked manatees, whales without waistbands. We must draw a line somewhere." She leaned forward toward the camera, her voice dropping to a whisper like she was sharing something sacred. "They want you to believe this is about biology. It's not. It's about boundaries, and those are eroding, one dolphin flip at a time. Outside the bubble of her makeshift war room, however, the world was laughing. Local morning shows ran segments on Karen versus the Aquarium, with anchors chuckling through edited clips of her chants layered over cartoon sound effects. Radio hosts joked about sea creature fashion lines. One late-night comedian dedicated an entire 5-minute monologue to the event, comparing Karen's outrage to someone demanding squirrels wear pants in public parks. Even educational YouTube channels had begun to join in, releasing detailed breakdowns of dolphin anatomy with tongue-in-cheek titles like "Why Dolphins Don't Need Bras," a marine biologist's guide. Despite the tidal wave of mockery, Karen clung to her newfound purpose with the tenacity of someone who believed she had been chosen for a higher calling. Determined to escalate her cause, she contacted a small local newspaper known for printing conspiracy-laced letters to the editor. They agreed to publish her op-ed, though mostly out of amusement, under the bold headline, "My War on Dolphin Indecency, a Mother's Plea for Modest Marine Life." The piece was a rambling, emotional treatise that invoked everything from the fall of Rome to obscure biblical passages about guarding the eyes. She mailed physical copies to city council members, aquarium board directors, and even a senator whose staff immediately pinned the article to their office corkboard under the label Best of the Week. Fueled by this perceived victory, Karen organized a second protest, this time promoting it across every platform she could manage. By noon that Saturday, she returned to the aquarium, armed with a larger sign, a portable speaker system, and a folding table covered in laminated flyers and petitions. She wore a visor that read, "Protect Marine Modesty," in glitter letters, and had printed T-shirts with dolphins drawn in cartoon swim trunks. While she expected a crowd of fellow activists, what she got instead was a swarm of influencers, journalists, curious locals, and even a costumed dolphin mascot hired by a nearby college prank group to dance mockingly just behind her. The crowd chanted slogans, but not hers. Instead, they gleefully parodied her talking points, holding signs that said things like "Free the blowholes" and "Slippery and Proud." A marching band from a local high school arrived and began playing an upbeat remix of the viral Dolphin remix, the brass section blaring with ridiculous enthusiasm. Karen stood at her table, jaw clenched, gripping her sign so tightly her knuckles turned white. She tried to keep speaking into her megaphone, but the cacophony drowned her out. Every time she started her prepared speech, a chorus of people dressed in inflatable dolphin costumes danced behind her or mimicked her arm-flailing protests. At one point, a group of kids ran by tossing plastic beach balls marked "Censorship Sucks," laughing uncontrollably. She turned to one of the reporters filming and shouted, "This is harassment. This is spiritual warfare." But even the reporter, trying not to laugh, simply nodded and asked, "And how exactly do you plan to enforce dolphin dress codes in open water?" Karen sputtered, caught between fury and confusion, before launching into a convoluted explanation about full-body aquatic bodysuits and marine sanctuaries that followed Christian principles of exposure limitation. Her husband and children, wisely absent from the event, were at home pretending it wasn't happening. Jason had deleted all social media and refused to go to school Monday, dreading the inevitable dolphin jokes. Lily had taken to pretending her mother was a character in a TV show, but Karen refused to back down. In her mind, the laughter wasn't mockery, it was persecution. It was proof that she was right, that she was exposing something they didn't want the world to see. "They're scared of me," she told her live stream. "Scared of the truth, that's why they laugh." Eventually, aquarium security, more amused than angry, approached and reminded her she had been officially banned from the premises and was now trespassing. She responded by stepping exactly 1 inch outside the painted boundary line on the sidewalk and shouting, "This is public land. You can't silence me here." When they informed her that blocking pedestrian walkways and distributing unapproved materials still violated city ordinances, she declared it a constitutional crisis and called a lawyer, one who immediately hung up after hearing the nature of the case. As dusk fell and the crowds thinned, Karen remained at her table, alone now except for her camera and a few curious pigeons pecking at dropped flyers. Even in solitude, she remained convinced she had sparked something real, something righteous. She held her sign in one hand and her phone in the other, whispering into the live stream like a prophet in exile. It always starts with one voice, one stand. They can laugh today, but tomorrow they'll understand. Behind her, the lights of the aquarium glowed soft and inviting, a peaceful blue illuminating the massive dolphin tank through glass. Inside, the dolphins swam in gentle loops, unbothered by the human chaos that had unfolded just outside their habitat, indifferent to modesty or shame, graceful and free in a way Karen could never understand. The final week of Karen's crusade unfolded with all the trappings of a social movement gasping for relevance, desperate to maintain momentum even as the world moved on. The internet, ever fickle, had already shifted its gaze to newer spectacles, fresher controversies, and viral distractions. The satire accounts that once churned out remix after remix of Karen's dolphin debacle now poked fun at her dwindling audience, captioning screenshots of her livestream with biting sarcasm like Day 9. Still no dolphin pants, still no support. Her online followers, who once numbered in the thousands, had shrunk to a fraction, many only lingering out of morbid curiosity or the hope of witnessing another meltdown. Still, Karen persisted, seated in her dining room converted protest headquarters, surrounded by posters curling at the edges, piles of unmailed petitions, and a whiteboard filled with timelines and imagined strategic alliances that had never come to fruition. Her voice had grown hoarse from days of live streaming, her eyes bloodshot from sleep deprivation, but her conviction remained intact, cocooning her in a delusion of righteousness no ridicule could puncture. She had sent letters to politicians, emails to animal rights organizations, and even tried to contact daytime talk shows, insisting she had unearthed a scandal the world was too afraid to face. But none of them responded. One small news blog offered her a brief video interview, though the interviewer clearly saw it as comedy, peppering the discussion with loaded questions about underwater lingerie and dolphin shame. Karen didn't catch the tone or chose not to, and answered every question with the same grim sincerity that had become her trademark. When asked if she had considered the dolphins' feelings about her protest, she nodded gravely and said she believed the dolphins would thank her if only they could speak. "They're victims," she whispered into the mic. "Silenced by nature. I speak on their behalf." That clip predictably went viral again, but not in the way she had hoped. It was spliced into compilation videos titled Top 10 Karen Moments of the Year, and included dramatic music every time she said marine modesty. At home, her family had reached the end of their rope. Jason refused to leave his room, afraid of more teasing at school, and Lily had started pretending her last name was different whenever asked about her mom. Her husband, trying his best to hold the family together, finally sat down at the kitchen table one evening, folding his hands in front of him as Karen paced in front of a large poster that read "Dolphins deserve dignity." He waited for her to finish another monologue about aquatic morality before he spoke, his voice tired but gentle. "Karen, you've made your point. Everyone knows where you stand, but this isn't changing anything. The kids are suffering, you're suffering, we're all exhausted. Can we just move on?" Karen froze, clutching her latest petition in one hand, eyes blinking slowly like she hadn't understood the language. "Move on," she echoed. "From the truth," he sighed. "From all this, from trying to dress dolphins, from being a national joke. It's not a cause, Karen, it's a meme, and it's hurting the people who love you." For a moment, silence hovered between them, stretching across the room like a heavy curtain. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it again, then looked down at the paper in her hand. Her fingers trembled, the paper fluttering. Slowly she sat, her shoulders slumped. It was the first time in days she had truly paused. Later that night, when the house was quiet, she stood by the window and stared out into the yard where plastic flamingos poked from the lawn and the neighborhood kids rode bikes under the glow of streetlights. She could hear faint laughter, the kind that comes from shared joy, not ridicule. A breeze stirred the hem of the curtain and carried with it the distant sound of water trickling through the garden hose someone had left running. For the first time, she wondered if maybe she had misread the world, not its values but its priorities, not its evil but its indifference. Maybe no one had conspired to corrupt children through dolphin shows. Maybe people were just trying to enjoy their day. The next morning, Karen woke early, showered, and for once didn't set up her phone or log into her live stream. She made breakfast in silence, placing plates in front of Jason and Lily, who stared at her cautiously, waiting for another lecture or dramatic announcement. But she only smiled and said, "Pancakes. I thought we could eat together." Jason blinked in disbelief. Lily clapped her hands. Her husband walked into the kitchen, coffee in hand, clearly prepared for another morning of damage control, only to find Karen sitting quietly at the table. "I think I'm done," she said softly, "with the protests, with the live streams, with trying to make dolphins wear pants." They stared. She gave a sheepish shrug. "I think the world's not ready for me, or maybe I wasn't ready for the world." The silence was thick, but this time it felt peaceful, not awkward. Lily reached for a pancake. Jason exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for a week. Her husband just nodded. "That's good," he said. "I think we all need a break." That afternoon, they went out together as a family. No signs, no shouting, no cameras. Just a quiet trip to the park where Karen sat on a bench and watched her children play. She felt lighter somehow, not because the world had changed, but because she had stopped trying to force it to bend to her will. The world wasn't perfect, but maybe it didn't need to be policed at every turn. Maybe, she thought, modesty was about more than just what others wore. It was about knowing when to be still, when to listen, and when to let go. The internet moved on as it always does. Her name stopped trending. The memes faded. The aquarium saw a surge in visitors, many of whom came just to see the now semi-famous dolphins and chuckle at the infamous splash zone. One of the dolphins was unofficially nicknamed Modesty, and a nearby gift shop sold dolphin plushies wearing tiny swimsuits as a tongue-in-cheek nod to the saga. But Karen never returned, not to protest, not to yell, not to wave signs. She had said her piece, however misguided, and now she was content to leave the water still. Sometimes letting go is the most modest thing of all.